Welcome back to Life Sanctuary. It is such a joy to have you here with us again. Today, we are going to explore a story about love, greed, and the secrets that we keep to protect the ones we care about. It is a story that asks a very important question: does age really matter when two souls connect? Before we begin this dramatic tale, I have a small favor to ask of our wonderful listeners. If you believe that true love has no expiration date and that families should support one another, please take a moment to subscribe and like this video. Your support helps us continue telling stories that matter. Now, let us open the doors to the Grand Willow Creek Manor and see what is unfolding inside. The dining room of Willow Creek Manor was silent, except for the sound of silver forks hitting fine china. At the head of the long mahogany table sat Evelyn. Evelyn was 70 years old, a woman of immense grace and wealth. She was wearing a silk emerald dress that matched her eyes, though her face looked paler than usual. Around the table sat her 3 adult children, Brenda, Robert, and Lisa. They were all in their 40s, and they were all currently staring at the empty chair next to their mother. Usually, Sunday dinner was a time for the children to ask for money or complain about their spouses. But tonight, the atmosphere was different. Tonight, Evelyn had an announcement to make. She took a sip of water, her hand trembling ever so slightly. "Children," Evelyn said, her voice soft but clear. "I have invited someone to join us for dessert." Brenda, the eldest daughter, rolled her eyes. "Mother, please tell me it is not another financial advisor," Brenda said sharply. "We already handle your estate perfectly fine." "It is not an advisor," Evelyn replied, a small blush forming on her cheeks. "It is a man named Mark." Robert, the middle son, stopped eating. "Mark?" Robert asked suspiciously. "Who is Mark? Is he the new gardener?" "No," Evelyn said, straightening her posture. "Mark is my fiancé." The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. Lisa, the youngest, actually dropped her fork onto her plate with a loud clatter. "Fiancé?" Brenda practically shrieked. "Mother, you have been a widow for 15 years. You are 70 years old." "I am aware of my age, Brenda," Evelyn said with dignity. "But I am still alive. And I have found happiness." Just then, the double doors to the dining room opened. A man walked in. This was Mark. He was tall, with kind eyes and salt and pepper hair. He was wearing a simple, inexpensive suit that looked a bit loose on his frame. But what shocked the children the most was not his clothes. It was his age. Mark looked to be in his mid-40s. He was nearly 30 years younger than Evelyn. He walked over to Evelyn's chair and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. The way he looked at her was full of tenderness and care. "Good evening," Mark said, his voice calm and deep. "It is nice to finally meet you all." Brenda stood up, her face turning red with anger. "This is a joke, right?" Brenda demanded. "Mother, this man is young enough to be your son." "Brenda, sit down," Evelyn warned. "No, I will not sit down," Brenda yelled. "Look at him. He is clearly a predator." Mark did not get angry. He simply stood by Evelyn's side, his expression unreadable. "I understand your concern," Mark said politely. But I assure you, my intentions are honorable. Honorable? Robert scoffed, standing up to join his sister. You see a wealthy, vulnerable old woman, and you see a jackpot. That is enough. Evelyn said, her voice rising. Mark has been my companion for 6 months. He makes me feel safe. He makes me feel loved. He makes you feel confused, Lisa chimed in nervously. Mom, maybe you should see a doctor. This isn't rational. I see plenty of doctors, Evelyn said quietly, exchanging a quick, secret glance with Mark. And Mark is the only good thing in my life right now. The dinner ended in disaster. The children stormed out of the house, leaving their dessert untouched. Mark sat down next to Evelyn and took her hand. I told you they would be upset, Mark said softly. They will come around, Evelyn said, though she sounded unsure. They just need time. But outside in the parking lot, the children were not planning to come around. They were planning a war. Brenda paced back and forth next to her expensive luxury car. Did you see his shoes? Brenda hissed. They were cheap leather. He has no money. He is a broke gigolo looking for a payout. We cannot let him marry her, Robert said, lighting a cigarette nervously. If he marries her, he gets half the estate. Mom is not well. If she passes away, he takes everything. Our inheritance, Lisa whispered, looking terrified. I have 2 mortgages to pay. I cannot lose my share. We need to stop this, Brenda declared. We need to find out who he really is. The next morning, Brenda hired a private investigator. She gave the investigator Mark's name and photo. Find me the dirt, Brenda instructed. I want to know about his debts, his ex-wives, his criminal record. Find me something that will humiliate him. 2 weeks went by. The engagement party was scheduled to take place in the grand ballroom of the manor. Evelyn wanted to celebrate her happiness with her friends and family. She spent thousands of dollars on flowers, music, and catering. But her health was declining. On the morning of the party, Evelyn felt dizzy and weak. Mark was there, as always. He checked her pulse with professional precision. He handed her a glass of water and a small pill. You need to rest, Evelyn, Mark said gently. Maybe we should cancel the party. No, Evelyn insisted, gripping his hand. I want to show the world that I am not afraid to love. I want my children to see us together. Mark sighed but nodded. I will be right by your side. I will not let you fall. That evening, the ballroom was filled with the city's elite. Ladies in glittering gowns and men in tuxedos mingled under the chandeliers. Evelyn looked beautiful, but she was leaning heavily on Mark's arm. Every time she stumbled slightly, Mark was there to catch her, guiding her with incredible patience. From the other side of the room, Brenda, Robert, and Lisa watched like hawks. Brenda was clutching a manila envelope in her hand. The private investigator had delivered it just an hour ago. This is it, Brenda whispered to her brothers, a cruel smile playing on her lips. We have him. What is in the envelope? Lisa asked. Proof, Brenda said. Proof that he is a fraud. The music stopped as the band leader announced it was time for toasts. Evelyn and Mark stood on the small stage. Evelyn took the microphone, her hand shaking. "Thank you all for coming," Evelyn said breathlessly. "I know my choice has surprised many of you. But Mark has given me a second chance at life." The crowd applauded politely, though there were many whispers. Then, Brenda stepped forward. She walked up the stairs to the stage, the heels of her shoes clicking ominously. She snatched the microphone from her mother's hand. "Excuse me, everyone," Brenda announced, her voice booming through the speakers. "I think it is time for a little reality check." The room went deadly silent. Evelyn looked at her daughter with wide, fearful eyes. "Brenda, please do not do this," Evelyn pleaded. "I am doing this for your own good, Mother," Brenda said coldly. She turned to face Mark, waving the envelope in his face. "You thought you could fool us," Brenda sneered at him. "You thought you could walk into this family, seduce a senile old woman, and take our money." "Brenda, stop!" Evelyn cried out, clutching her chest. "I will not stop," Brenda yelled. "I have the report right here. This man, Mark, is unemployed. He hasn't had a registered job in 5 years." The crowd gasped. "He lives in a small, rented apartment in the bad part of town," Brenda continued, enjoying the moment. "He is nothing but a leech. A gold digger preying on a sick woman." Robert shouted from the crowd, "Throw the bum out." Mark stood perfectly still. He did not look angry. He did not look embarrassed. He looked at Brenda with a mixture of pity and sadness. He reached into his pocket, but not for a weapon. He pulled out a handkerchief and gently wiped a tear from Evelyn's cheek. "Are you finished?" Mark asked Brenda, his voice calm but authoritative. "I am finished when you get out of my house," Brenda spat. "It is not your house yet," Mark said quietly. "And it never will be yours." Brenda screamed. "Security! Remove him!" 2 security guards started walking toward the stage. Evelyn began to hyperventilate. The stress was too much for her. She grabbed Mark's arm, her face turning gray. "Mark!" she gasped. I can't breathe." Evelyn's legs gave out, and she collapsed. The crowd screamed. "Mother!" Lisa shrieked. But before the children could even move, Mark was in action. His demeanor changed instantly. He was no longer the quiet fiancé. He moved with the speed and precision of someone who had done this 1,000 times. He caught Evelyn before she hit the floor, laying her down gently. "Call 911. Mark commanded, his voice booming across the room with absolute authority. He placed his fingers on her neck, checking her vitals. He looked up at the stunned children. "Give her space. Back up," Mark ordered them. Brenda stood frozen, the envelope dropping from her hand. She watched as the unemployed gold digger began to perform advanced medical checks on her mother with the skill of a master. Mark looked up at the security guards. "Bring me the defibrillator from the hallway. Now." As the room descended into chaos, Brenda looked down at the papers that had spilled from the envelope. She had only read the summary page. She hadn't read the full background check. If she had, she would have seen the truth. But for now, all she saw was the man she hated trying to save her mother's life. And she had a sinking feeling that she had made a terrible, terrible mistake. The music had stopped, and the only sound in the room was the harsh breathing of the guests. Mark was on his knees beside Evelyn, his expensive suit jacket thrown aside. His hands moved with a rhythm and confidence that was mesmerizing to watch. He was performing CPR with perfect form, counting the compressions aloud. 1, 2, 3, 4, Mark counted, his voice steady and calm. Brenda stood frozen at the edge of the stage, the incriminating papers still scattered at her feet. She watched as the man she called a leech worked to save her mother's life. "Where is that defibrillator?" Mark shouted without looking up. A security guard ran over, handing him the device. Mark snatched it, tore open the pads, and applied them to Evelyn's chest. "Clear," Mark commanded. His voice was so authoritative that even Robert and Lisa stepped back instinctively. The device delivered a shock. Evelyn's body jolted. Mark checked the monitor, then her pulse. "We have a rhythm," Mark said, letting out a breath he had been holding. "It is weak, but it is there." Moments later, the paramedics burst through the doors with a stretcher. Usually, paramedics take over immediately. But when the lead paramedic saw Mark, he stopped in his tracks. "Dr. Sterling?" the paramedic asked, looking shocked. "Is that you?" Mark nodded briefly. "She has gone into cardiac arrest. I stabilized her, but she needs transport now." "Yes, doctor," the paramedic said respectfully. "We are on it." Brenda blinked, confused. "Doctor?" Brenda whispered. Why did he call him doctor? Mark stood up, wiping sweat from his forehead. He looked at the three children with a gaze that cut right through them. "Meet us at the hospital," Mark said coldly. "And pray that your mother survives the stress you just caused her." Mark jumped into the back of the ambulance with Evelyn, leaving the children standing in the stunned silence of the ballroom. Later that night, the hospital waiting room was quiet and tense. Brenda, Robert, and Lisa sat in uncomfortable plastic chairs. Brenda was still holding the manila envelope from the private investigator. She finally decided to read past the first page. Her hand shook as she flipped through the documents. "This does not make sense," Brenda muttered. "What is it?" Robert asked, biting his nails. "It says here he has no current employer," Brenda said. "But look at the previous employment history." She pointed to a line on the paper. "Chief of Neurosurgery at St. Jude's Hospital," Brenda read aloud. "Retired 3 years ago." Lisa gasped. "He was a neurosurgeon?" "And look at his assets," Brenda continued, her face turning pale. "He owns patents for surgical instruments. His net worth is, oh my God." "How much?" Robert demanded. "It is over $20 million, Brenda whispered. "He has more money than mother." Just then, a doctor in a white coat walked into the waiting room. It was Dr. Reynolds, the head of the emergency department. "Family of Evelyn?" Dr. Reynolds asked. "We are her children," Brenda said, standing up quickly. "How is she?" "She is stable," Dr. Reynolds said. "Thanks to the quick actions of Dr. Sterling, she is going to make it through the night." "Dr. Sterling?" Robert asked. "You mean Mark?" Yes, Mark Sterling, Dr. Reynolds smiled. He is a legend in this hospital. He retired early after he lost his own wife to cancer. He decided to dedicate his life to pro bono work and research. The three children looked at each other, the shame washing over them like a cold wave. He isn't unemployed, Lisa said softly. He is retired. And that apartment in the bad part of town? Dr. Reynolds added, overhearing them. That is near the free clinic where he volunteers 5 days a week. He lives there to be close to his patients. Brenda felt like the floor was opening up beneath her. She had humiliated a hero in front of the entire city. Can we see her? Brenda asked, her voice trembling. She is awake, the doctor said. But she has requested to see her lawyer first. Her lawyer? Robert panicked. Why? I think you know why, the doctor said, his face hardening. An hour later, the children were allowed into the room. Evelyn looked frail, lying in the hospital bed with tubes connected to her arms. Mark was sitting in the chair beside her, holding her hand. Standing at the foot of the bed was Mr. Henderson, the family lawyer. Mother, Brenda said, rushing forward with fake tears. We were so worried. We are so sorry about the misunderstanding. Evelyn raised a hand to stop her. It was not a misunderstanding, Brenda, Evelyn said weakly. It was cruelty. We were just trying to protect you, Robert lied. We thought he was after your money. Mark stood up slowly. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. I tried to tell you, Mark said calmly. But you wouldn't listen. He tossed the document onto the tray table. That is a prenuptial agreement, Mark explained. I signed it the day Evelyn agreed to marry me. Brenda picked it up. The document stated clearly that Mark waived all rights to Evelyn's fortune, property, and assets. He didn't want a single penny. I have my own money, Mark said. I didn't need hers. I just needed her. The silence in the room was deafening. Mother, please, Lisa cried. Forgive us. Evelyn looked at her children with sadness in her eyes. I forgive you as a mother, Evelyn said. But as a woman who deserves respect, I cannot forget this. Evelyn took a deep breath. Mr. Henderson has just updated my will. The three children froze. In light of your behavior, Evelyn said, and your obvious concern for my money over my happiness, I have made a decision. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat and opened his leather folder. Upon Mrs. Evelyn's passing, the lawyer read, the entirety of her estate, including the manor, the investments, and the savings, will be liquidated. Liquidated? Robert choked out. And the proceeds? 100% of the proceeds will be donated to the Sterling Foundation, the lawyer continued. A charity run by Mark, which builds hospitals in developing countries. What? Brenda screamed. You can't do that. We are your flesh and blood. You are my children, Evelyn said softly. But you are also greedy adults who need to learn a lesson. And what do we get? Robert demanded aggressively. You get the envelopes Brenda found, Evelyn said. And the knowledge that you destroyed your own inheritance with your arrogance. Evelyn closed her eyes, exhausted. Mark, please escort them out, Evelyn whispered. I need to rest. The security guards appeared at the door. Brenda, Robert, and Lisa were escorted out of the hospital room, crying and shouting. But it was too late. Evelyn lived for another 6 months. They were the happiest 6 months of her life. She and Mark traveled to the coast, watched sunsets, and enjoyed the simple things. When she finally passed away peacefully in her sleep, Mark was holding her hand. At the funeral, the children stood in the back, ignored by the other guests. They watched as Mark stood by the grave, not as a rich man or a poor man, but as a man who had truly loved. After the funeral, the will was executed exactly as Evelyn had wanted. Mark used the money to build 3 new hospitals. Thousands of lives were saved because of Evelyn's legacy. As for the children, they were left with nothing but their expensive cars and their empty pride. They learned the hard way that when you dig for dirt on someone else, you often end up burying yourself. Mark never remarried. He continued his work, wearing the simple gold band Evelyn had given him, a symbol of a love that was worth more than all the money in the world. Thank you for listening to this story on Life Sanctuary. It reminds us that love is not about age or bank accounts. It is about 2 souls finding comfort in one another. And it serves as a warning that greed can blind us to the true treasures in life. If this story touched your heart, please remember to like and subscribe. Until next time, be kind to one another, and never judge a book by its cover.